Good morning. My name is Kimberly Seipert, your worship leader for this morning's service, and this is Common Ground, our celebration of worship for people of many paths who gather to share in the responsible search for meaning and truth. This is a warm and open community where all who come with open minds and kind hearts are welcome, regardless of ability, age, race, gender identity, or sexual orientation. We hope that all who join us today find this a safe place to worship. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassion is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. Now please greet the people next to you. You'll have time to greet everyone else during coffee and conversation after the service. When the bell sounds, please remain seated and join in a moment of silence, followed by our gathering in song. Now please join the Come As You Are choir in our opening song, The Human Touch Can Light the Flame. This is the fire of our faith. Please join me in this responsive reading as Turner Bridgforth, today's speaker, lights our chalice flame. I will read the slides that say worship leader, and you will read the slides that say congregation.
All right, we can do it.
We light this chalice as a symbol of the spark of life which abides within us and around us.
May it be as a light in a dark night, a light in a window that welcomes the weary traveler home.
May it be as a light in the hand of a trusted friend that guides us along the path.
May it be as a light in the face of one we love, bright with joy.
I invite you to join me in a renewal of our sacred promises. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. As you are seated, please move toward the walls to make it easier for folks still arriving to find seats. And know you may also enjoy the service remotely upstairs in the loft on large screen TV. Today, Zoe Paredes will read the story for all ages, The Spider and the Very Important Person by Diana Davies.
I'd like to share with you today a story about a simple little spider who did an amazing thing. You'll find versions of this story in Christian, Jewish, and Muslim traditions, and in ancient Japanese folk tales as well. In the Christian version, the baby Jesus, Mary, and Joseph are hiding from King Herod. In the Jewish version, a young David is hiding from King Saul. In the Muslim version, the Prophet Muhammad and his friend are hiding from a crowd of people who want to harm them outside the city of Mecca. In the Japanese version, the great shotgun warrior Yoritomo is hiding from his enemies. In all these stories, though, the spider is just a spider. So here's the story. Once upon a time, a very important person was watching a spider weaving her web, and the very important person thought to herself, "Why in the world did God make spiders? What good are they? They aren't beautiful or cute. They can't do tricks. They won't guard the house or make anything we humans can eat or wear. They don't sing or make interesting sounds, and those webs are always building or just a nuisance." And the spider overheard her, but she didn't care. She just kept working on her web. Soon, though, the very important person was in trouble. Her enemies were out to get her. She had to run and hide. She hid in the deepest, darkest cave she could find, but still she worried that her enemies would find her. Just then, the VIP noticed that the little spider had started building a new web at the entrance of the cave. She was afraid to shoo her away for fear that her enemies might hear, so she stayed very quiet and watched the spider work. In no time, the cave entrance was completely covered by the web, and it was just in time because right then, the very important person's enemies came running up to the cave, but they didn't go in. The enemy leader said, "Ick, no need to go in that cave. Look at that big spider web. It's clear no one has been in there in a long time." And the very important person realized something very important that day. Wow, spiders are the best. So what if they're not beautiful or cute, and can't do tricks or sing, and can't guard the house or make things that humans can't eat or wear? The spider deserves our kindness and respect just like all animals. The spider just shrugged her many little shoulders and said, just doing what spiders do. But thanks for noticing. Have you ever looked closely at a spider's web? Each individual thread is so thin and delicate you can barely see it. But the web itself is incredibly strong, and this great strong web is made by just one little spider, just doing what spiders do best. What the very important person in our story came to understand is that every being is worthy of respect and kindness. Every being has a precious life to live. Even the littlest spider can save the life of a very important person. Even the littlest spider is very important too.
Thank you, Zoe. In religious education today, the children will learn about Muslims and conflict. This lesson will discuss the Arab-Israeli conflict, as well as a corresponding activity on how difficult it can be to keep peace between two countries for so many years. Next week, the children will hear and discuss the story of the Mormon Trail, as well as take part in an activity that helps with the understanding of the path the Mormon religion took across America. Today, the youth group will continue the Muslims in conflict lesson by watching a crash course video and a discussion on the Arab-Israeli conflict in the Middle East. Next week, the youth will discuss relationships between women's status as affirmed in the Quran and the treatment of women in contemporary Islamic countries. At this time, children are invited to take part in religious education. Let us send them out with these words. We pass this flame of religious freedom from generation to generation. Our call to worship this morning is by C.S. Lewis. There are no ordinary people. It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. All day long we are, in some degree, helping each other to one or other of these destinations. It is the light of these overwhelming possibilities that we should conduct all our dealings with one another, all friendships, all loves, all play, all politics. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. This does not mean that we are to be perpetually solemn. We must play. But our merriment must be of that kind which exists between people who have taken each other seriously. No superiority, no presumption. And our charity must be a real and costly love, with deep feeling for the sins in spite of which we love the sinner. Next to the divine universe itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. If they are your neighbor, they are holy in almost the same way, for in them also the divine universe is truly hidden. This song, We Are a Gentle, Angry People, written by Holly Near in the wake of the Harvey Milk assassination in 1978, is a call to action. It demands that we make sure everyone knows who we are and how many we are, who we will not be moved, we who are scared and angry and loving and resisting. Holly is in the first image you'll see during the song. Please stand as you're willing and join the Come As You Are choir in our worship and song.
We are gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are
Please be seated. Our speaker today is Turner Bridgforth, who is currently a Minister of Divinity student at Bright Divinity School at TCU. He moved to Fort Worth with his wife and son to attend school and to be closer to his wife's family. Turner is incredibly grateful to be speaking to the Pathways congregation today, and he hopes that the Bright Divinity School can continue to be a quality source of preachers for this community in the future. Now let's welcome Turner to our pulpit.
First, I just want to thank you guys for inviting me again to come and speak to you this morning. There's nothing quite like seeing a cell phone selfie that large on the side of a wall of yourself. They're always this big, usually. The Office of Field Ministry at Bright Divinity School that they don't often get calls for UU pulpit supply. He believes that the fear is that they will be sent to Methodist. So I thank you again for asking Bright, and I hope that you continue to do so in the future. When I was first asked to come speak at Pathways here this morning, several months ago, even though I'm starting an internship at First Jefferson in another week or so, it was a good opportunity for me to talk about something that's been on my mind for almost 2 years. See, as a Unitarian Universalist at a Christian Divinity School in North Texas, I often find myself explaining Unitarian Universalism to other students who have never heard of our tradition. I have to be honest, I kind of like it. I feel like an official spokesperson for the church as I rattle off any one of my series of elevator speeches that I have prepared, depending on the situation and the time that's been allotted. I like to think that I've gotten pretty good at it at this point. Once during my first semester, however, after one of my shorter elevator speeches, I was presented with a fairly complicated question. It was a small class with 3 students and 1 professor. We were discussing evangelizing when the professor got this curious look on his face, and he asked if Unitarian Universalists evangelize if we went out into the world and tried to convince others to come to our church. I said no, at least not in the way that they were thinking. The other 2 students seemed shocked, and they asked me why, and I launched into one of my short UU presentations and explained that because we believe that a person's beliefs are personal and unique, we don't necessarily believe we need to save anyone, and our church is right. I explained that the UU Church welcomes everyone, regardless of what they specifically believe, and that we tend to just let others know that our church is here and encourage their curiosity. While the other 2 students seemed satisfied by my answer, the professor had a follow-up. He asked, would a white supremacist be welcome at a UU church? It's a good question, right? I wanted to answer right away, but I had to pause. I had to wonder for a second if the answer could be no. It would certainly be understandable. The church that welcomes white supremacists wouldn't make a great banner for your window upstairs. Doesn't exactly feel like a great slogan to put out there. But the answer to this question couldn't be just about appearances for me. I think this is a question about belief. I actually think that for our spiritual community, this may be one of the most challenging aspects of one of our most sacred principles. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. A few months after the horrific events of September 11th, 2001, my grandfather, a career Baptist minister, shared something new he had come to understand about fundamental belief. He said that one of the biggest problems in the world was fundamental belief. The problem with fundamental belief is that a fundamental believer knows that their belief is 100% true. Their belief is 100% true, then any and all differing beliefs are 100% wrong. If another person's belief is 100% wrong, then seeing that person as less than becomes all too easy. Once someone is deemed less than or other, harboring hate, committing violence, justifying murder, or even genocide against that person becomes easy. Now, my grandfather was talking about what some people were calling a holy war at the time. But this gift of understanding from my grandfather stayed with me to this day. In some ways, it was a guiding understanding that ultimately led me to the Unitarian Universalist Church. As soon as someone is deemed less than or other, hate and violence are surely close behind. One of the most common ways that I have seen people become otherized into less than is through the use of one simple word: just. See, when I was in high school, I often found myself in the role of peace negotiator between my friends. Adolescent boys tend to butt heads over a lot of things, but with my friends, it was mostly fights over girls. Some of the fights were about broken plans. One time it was a car, but ultimately accusations hurled vicariously through me was usually started with the word just. He's just a jerk. He's just being sorry, I have insert an acceptable word for church in here. Let's just move forward. They always wanted to reduce the person they were mad at to a singularity, to one dimension. Just anything less than a complex human being. Over and over again, I would find myself explaining one friend's perspective to the other, trying to prove that they were more than just one thing. Or as C.S. Lewis put it in our reading, there are no ordinary people. See, my problem with saying no, that a white supremacist would not be welcome in a UU church, is that if we, as a spiritual community, reduce a white supremacist or anyone other extremist who hates people fundamentally down to just hate, we are guilty of the same otherization and dehumanization that white supremacists are trying to spread. I feel like I need to be clear here. If you have hatred in your heart for white supremacists, I get it. It has become almost impossible these days living in a social media culture to avoid the ugly forms that white supremacists now take in our country. It sometimes overwhelmingly feels like the desire to fight against the powers of hate in this world. I've seen videos of protesters staring Nazis and white supremacists in the face on picket lines, and in those moments, hashtag punch a Nazi doesn't seem like a bad idea. My problem is that when humans fight fire with fire, we just end up with more fire, and everyone gets burned. So what am I supposed to do with my desire to fight hate? We have all heard the answer dozens of times and in dozens of ways. But I think the words of Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, are short and simple. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. Hatred is only ceased by love. I'm sure most of you have heard a similar to identical arguments at some point. The idea inspired the image of a long-haired woman in a sundress, delicately inserting a daisy into the stem of a gun barrel and a rifle in a picket line in the 1960s. The image is beautiful and inspiring and really not helpful in any practical way. Because when I think about what love is to me, applying that to someone who fundamentally hates other human beings seems difficult. Sometimes it even feels impossible. For me, love is to look into the eyes of another human being and see God. And it's hard to see God in the face of hate. But when I think about it, if I remove the theology from my definition, if I would define love as looking into the eyes of another person and seeing a human being, a person that is far more complex than either themselves realize, an individual experiencing reality in ways that I can never particularly truly understand. I have to realize that a person just hate. And then I am stuck with a difficult conclusion. The principle of the inherent worth and dignity of every person does not exclude those who disagree with the principle of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Confucius once said, "It is easy to hate and it is difficult to love. This is how the whole scheme of things works. All good things are difficult to achieve, and bad things are very easy to get." Like I said before, recognizing inherent worth and dignity can be one of the biggest challenges to being a Unitarian Universalist, particularly that every person part. If our principles as a welcoming spiritual community recognize and value the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the answer to this question, would the white supremacist be welcome in a UU church, has to be yes. So when I was asked, would a white supremacist be welcome in a UU church, I paused, as I said, for a lot less time than I've taken to explain my thinking to you here. And I answered yes. But I had 2 asterisks by my answer. The second asterisk was that white supremacists would probably not want to come to a UU church. But I wanted to put my answer to the test, and I'm still not sure if this is a good idea. I wanted to put my answer to the test by inviting a white supremacist to come join us this morning. So if someone standing by the door wouldn't mind opening that up for me. No, there's no one there. There's no one there. I'm sorry. Of course not. I would not do that to you, especially not as a guest speaker. Yeah, it's not her. No. I want to get invited back here someday. That's not what I'm doing. But I have a reason for my little deception here. I don't want you guys to get mad at me. Right now, while the experience is still fresh in your mind, think about how you felt when you found out that, not when you found out that I tricked you. I'm sure you were mad at that moment just a little bit. Think about how you felt in that moment when you thought there was an unexpected guest on the other side of that door, about to enter this sacred space. Some people may have felt afraid. Some of you may have even been frozen by your fear. Some people may have even felt angry at someone that they had not ever met or even seen. Some people in this sacred space may have even wanted to walk up and stand and attack. I'm sure that at least a few people even felt the intense combination of fear and anger that made them think about getting up and leaving altogether, perhaps never to return. All of those feelings are justified. And I want you to know that my intent was not to be cruel or hurtful. My intent was to bring our initial reactions to our attention. Because my first asterisk was, yes, a white supremacist would be welcome to the UU church, but the mission on day one would be to get them to stop being a white supremacist. That's what I really want to talk to you about today. As I said before, white supremacists aren't exactly flocking to our congregational communities that focuses on acceptance and understanding and the inherent worth of every living person. When we as Unitarian Universalists encounter hate in the form of white supremacy, it tends to be in the world outside of these sacred walls. And I do not think that we can continue to afford to remain silent about our principles in the world outside these walls. Unitarian Universalism is an opponent of hate. Now, if ever before, is the time when Unitarian Universalist Church must work to actively fight hate. When I was a child in the 80s, I was told that racism was almost completely a thing of the past. I was told that as soon as the last few people who were still racist died, racism would become a thing of the past. And I believed it. It made sense. Racism was an old thinking that would die off with the people that thought it. But one day, when I was 12 or so, I spent the night at a friend's house. At some point during the evening, he pointed to his grandfather, who was living with them at the time, and he whispered, "That's my granddad. He doesn't like black people or Mexicans. He calls them," and he went off in a slew of racial slurs that come flying out of his mouth, while he was giggling and had a wide smile. I'm one of those people, clearly, whose emotions seem to be written all over their foreheads. And I'm sure that my friend saw that I was not okay with the words he was using. We had gone to the same school and grown up in the same multicultural suburb of Washington, D.C. We had been taught that those words were not acceptable. Words were hateful. Those words were racist. I knew it and he knew it, but until he saw my face, I don't think he had known that I agreed with what we had been taught. He quickly tried to reassure me, "I don't have any problem with black people. I just think it's funny when my granddad says it." I did not know what to do. I didn't want my friend to be a racist. I didn't even know if he was. I didn't know if I should denounce his grandfather, those words, or the sentiment behind them. I didn't know how to investigate to see if my friend was being honest with me or if he had silenced himself, keeping his budding bigotry a secret. I ended up saying nothing. I ended up doing nothing. To this day, I wonder if there really was hate in his heart or what kind of human being he grew up to be. I realized that day that racism was not going to die off with a few holdouts of an aging generation. Those people who remembered segregation before the civil rights movement and their grandchildren to think the same way. What could I have done? How could I have fought hate in that moment? How could I have done it with love? Is this too much pressure to put on a 12-year-old kid? Maybe. Maybe these are the questions that I do not believe I have asked. How do we fight hate with love when the person who is harboring that hate is someone we know or even already love? See, this is where I got stuck. My problem is when I have thought about fighting hate, I have felt the same fear that some of you felt moments ago. I have felt the same anger, that same desire to attack. I have felt the same uncontrollable feeling that made me want to escape and maybe never come back. When I imagine what it would be like to stand in the face of a neo-Nazi, a Klan member, or a racist skinhead, I have no idea what emotion would dictate my actions in that moment. Would I stand frozen, made impotent by my fear of someone I justifiably assume is violent and dangerous? Would I attack and hashtag punch a Nazi? Would I just run away? I didn't have a horrifying guest behind those doors today, and I'm not going to presume that I know how a white supremacist would really be welcomed into this church. But I am certain that I do not know how I would be able to be welcoming to a white supremacist. That's why this sermon is not really whether a white supremacist would be welcome here or in any other UU church. It's about how we apply our principles as Unitarian Universalists to those who have been infected with fundamentalist hate that are part of our everyday lives. In the 2 years since I was asked this question, I have found one person in the country today who is doing his best to try and eliminate extremist and fundamentalist hate. And I believe that he's doing it with love in a way that we may be able to use as a welcoming community to do the same thing. His name is Christian Picciolini, which is a name I love saying, Picciolini. Christian Picciolini, which is simply a delightful name to say. The author of White American Youth. He became a skinhead at 14 and a neo-Nazi leader by the time he was 16. Today, he is an activist who, when interviewed, said that he tries to find the potholes that put people down the path that led them to racism, bigotry, and hate. And he tries to become a pothole filler. He has devoted his life to helping people leave extremist groups. Picciolini said that he was first indoctrinated with hate when he is what he described as a lonely kid. He felt abandoned by his family and by his friends, and he felt alone. He was alone one day when he was smoking a joint in an alleyway, and America's first neo-Nazi leader walked up and snatched it out of his hand and said, That's what the communists and Jews want you to do, to keep you docile. He was a lonely 14-year-old kid. He didn't know what a communist was. He didn't know what a Jew was. He didn't know what docile meant. But what he did know was that for what might have felt like for the first time, someone was paying attention to him. He wanted to belong. Over his years of working to help others disengage from hate groups, Picciolini said that he has often heard others say they also simply wanted to belong. It's an important step, Picciolini explains, in stopping extremists in this country is recognizing that in most cases, these people are not monsters. They are broken human beings doing monstrous things. I think it's also important to point out that this is how the powers of hate recruit. Not by shouting in people's faces and calling them names, but in the form of love. And as love takes time that they put in, and a lot more time than Punch a Nazi takes. When he was asked how he does it, how he rehabilitates people, how he saves them from hate extremist groups, Christian Picciolini said he does not tell these people that they are wrong. He doesn't argue with or debate them. He listens to them. He listens to their stories and tries to find the potholes that deviated them down the path that they are on, and he tries to become a pothole filler. He tries to find them job training, life coaching, mental health counseling. And when they become more resilient, more confident, and they find that they don't have to blame the other anymore, Picciolini challenges their ideology. And once he's done that, he introduces them to the people that they hate. And the demonization that they have built in their heads begins to crack because they start to humanize and relate to the human beings that they've been convinced were less than. For Picciolini, an organized meeting at a record store led him to meeting Jews and black people and LGBTQ people for the first time in his life. He had hated them without ever having met them. But once he met them, they were not so easy to hate. You see, Picciolini explained that what white supremacists and other extremist hate groups really love from their opposition is silence and violence. They love when the opposition gets violent because then they can use it as a victim narrative, and they use it to recruit. When violence is inflicted on them, when someone #punches a Nazi, they can point to that event or that footage on the internet and say, see, we aren't the violent ones, they are. And they love it when the response they get is silence, because they can use that to recruit. When no one responds, when no one says anything, they can say, see, no one's saying anything because they know we're right. Christian Picciolini challenges those of us who want to fight hate to find someone who is understanding of our passion and to give it to them. He guarantees that they are the ones who need it the most. His answer, in short, is to attempt to practice love. I do not know what fighting hate with love will be for each of us here. But I know we have a challenge ahead of us that we must each face in our own way. Since September 11th, more Americans have been killed on U.S. soil by white supremacist groups than by any foreign or domestic terrorist groups combined. We can no longer afford to remain silent. You must decide for yourself what steps you are willing and able to take when you encounter hate outside these walls. Maybe it's having your own elevator speech to share the understanding of our principles. Maybe it's getting out of the habit of reducing others down to just one dimension. Maybe it means working to understand how to control your fear and anger to avoid contributing to the silence or to the violence. Maybe it means keeping that friend on Facebook that put up that offensive post and asking questions instead of trolling them. Maybe it's talking to that family member about those hateful words at the dinner table. Many of the protesters during the civil rights movement spent months having smoke blown in their faces and water poured on their laps and heads so that they could train themselves not to respond with violence when white people did it during sit-ins at diners. For some of you, the challenge may be simply not to become enraged when confronted with hate. However you choose to fight hate, I hope that you choose to do it with love, in whatever form it may take. Because the first thing that we have to do, if we really want to help fight hate, is stop fighting.
For sharing your heart with us today. As we have received, so we are asked to give. Please use the offering envelopes provided. Green envelopes are for pledges or gifts to Pathways. Gold envelopes are for donations to our outreach partner. Our outreach partner for the months of July, August, and September is Mid-Cities Care Corps. Mid-Cities Care Corps is a nonprofit 501c3 established in 1981 with a mission to preserve the independence of senior neighbors in northeast Tarrant County. Based in Hearst, MCCC serves residents living in 11 northeast Tarrant cities, including Hearst, Euless, Bedford, Colleyville, Haltom City, Watauga, Southlake, Keller, and Richland Hills. MCCC connects clients with caring volunteers to provide 3 programs: transportation, light housework and home repair, and social outreach. No fees are charged for their services. For more information, see the link in your weekly newsletter. We will now receive the offering. Thank you for your generous gifts, kindly and freely given, this morning and by mail throughout the month, to support this congregation and our outreach efforts. Your offering is truly appreciated. We hope that each of you on your individual path through the joys and questions of life found some common ground with their fellow travelers here at Pathways today. As Turner extinguishes our chalice flame, let us join in these words. May this flame that has brightened our time together warm our hearts, light our paths, and inspire our vision as we once again go our separate ways. To all our first-time visitors, if you would like to learn more about Pathways, stay after worship and talk with us. We'd love to meet you. Be sure to share your contact information with us at our welcome table in the foyer. If you like, sign up on our website for our weekly e-newsletter to be informed of events coming up at Pathways. There are meetings and events here at Pathways throughout the week. Here are just a few, along with other announcements. For a full lineup, see Pathways Weekly or the events calendar on our website, pathwaysuu.org. Also take home the order of service sheet on your chairs because it has the dates of upcoming events on the announcements slide. Fun, food, and friendship was served at 4 circle dinners last night. Thank you to all attendees and to the hosts who welcomed us into their homes. Annette Briggs and Patrick Riley, Donna and Mike Morgan, Mark Villanova, and Sam and Jim Moore. Sandy, can't talk today. Sandy Moore. Save Saturday. Mark your calendars now, Saturday, September 14th, for the next round of circle dinners. For the month of August, the Women's Book Club is going to try something different. We're inviting everyone to join in reading the book Animal, Vegetable, Miracle by Barbara Kingsolver from the website. Animal, Vegetable, Miracle has only become more relevant since its publication, increasing our awareness of how the agricultural establishment can affect our health and environment, for the worse or for the better, and how a world of choice is in our hands. Food and buying food locally. Hopefully it will inspire us to make better choices. The book club will still meet Thursday, August 15th at 1 p.m. And we'll also discuss the book Sunday, August 25th at 11:30 in lieu of a TED Talk so that everyone can participate if interested. If you're considering becoming a member at Pathways or would just like to know more about Pathways and you, come to our Inquirers class next Sunday, August 18th at 11:30. This one-time class lasts about an hour, is offered several times throughout the year, and is required for membership. If you can't make this class, another will be offered soon. Please contact Kimala Ledbetter if interested. Who she is. Please stand up and wave and smile. The National Freedom from Religion Foundation invites you to hear an activist talk about his new book, The Founding Myth, on Friday, August 23rd, beginning at 7 p.m. right here at Pathways. For more information, see the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Oh, come on up. Are you Andrew?
No.
Oh. I was like, wow, we have the author here.
Hi, I apologize for this rude interjection. My name is the president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation Texas chapter, and we are so thankful that you are hosting our event. I want to come personally thank you guys for this. Andrew Seidel is a Harvard-educated constitutional lawyer, and he has recently written a book. It was only published this last May about the Founding Fathers and the mythology that we were founded as a Christian nation. And he does an amazing amount of research on this. And so he's doing a book tour through Texas. And through my friendship with Alec, we were able to use this facility here. So please come out. And he's a very engaging speaker. And the Freedom from Religion Foundation has been around since 1979, and they are the organization you hear about whenever you hear some city has an illegal cross or religious symbol on the state grounds, and it turns into legal action. They're the ones who pursue those things. So he's an amazing speaker. He will be hitting all the major cities in Texas, and we got allotted Friday night, which I wasn't crazy about, but it's what we got. So then thankfully you guys were available. So we appreciate you lending your facility to us and hope you can make it out. Thanks.
Please join our Tarrant County congregations in a picnic and party together at First Jefferson on Saturday, August 24th. There will be games in a bounce house and live entertainment from Michael Moore and other artists. Burgers, vegan option available, and drinks provided by NTUC. Pathways attendees are asked to bring a side or salad for the meal. This Labor Day weekend on Sunday, September 1st, we welcome all to join us for a celebration to tip our hats to labor. Together we'll enjoy folk music, read a little from the Grapes of Wrath, and retell stories of unions and labor. But most importantly, we'll clap our hands, sing a bit, and remember that this land is our land. Get here by 9:30 or earlier if you want the best seats in the house, and listen to the music you'll recognize and love. Pathways will again offer a Wellspring group during the next academic year. For the next few Sundays, participants from past groups will be telling you about their experience. Today, Aylin Hanford will be saying a few words about her experience in Wellspring.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good morning, everybody. Again, what a wonderful evening we all had at Circle Dinners. Thank you, everybody, again. Had a fabulous time. And I always love the discussions we have. It's amazing. So, have you ever asked yourself, why am I here? I found Pathways and the covenant sealed the deal, as well as these 7 principles. So be sure you read these from time to time, because that is really what brought me to UUism, and I knew nothing about UUism. I love this community so much so that I actually schedule my travel around Sunday so I can be here. I've never done that before. In fact, I hadn't been to church in so many years either. So to me, Sundays have now really become sacred because of all of you, my community out here. It feels good to be accepted, to belong, and to find sanity because of the way we think, or I think. I'm accepted here. I can be who I am. So why am I here? What is my spirituality? What does it mean to me? I was intrigued by Wellspring, but thought it would be too religious for me. I consider myself a humanist. So what is Wellspring in a nutshell? Well, opening includes a reconnecting ritual, a session on soul listening, and a session on creating sacred time and space. Being present focuses on becoming more fully present in the world, present to ourselves, to the holy, whichever way you define that. This session is represented by the trunk of the tree. Going deeper explores ways of deepening our connections with the holy and are going on to our Universalist Unitarian roots through spiritual practices. This section is represented by the root structure of the tree. Reaching out finds ways to make connections with others and the world as a result of spiritual practices. It is represented by the branches of the tree, so it's essentially the tree of life. So, Sandy and Jim are so caring, and they led us through our journey. It was wonderful because all they did was lead us and let us decide, read, think for ourselves on what we felt spirituality was. I learned so much about Universalist Unitarianism, how women played a prominent role. Parker Palmer, wonderful author, Thich Nhat Hanh, from everybody in the group, and also about myself. You determine your own spiritual practice. What was mine? Well, one of them was to simply say hello to everybody I could see, whether it's in the grocery store, I fly a lot, so on the plane, the passenger next to me, the check-in area, the TSA person, smile, ask them, how are they feeling? And mean it. Look them in the eye and see, what's going on. Or comforting somebody if you see somebody, or if somebody looks lost, just stop and say, is there anything I can do to help you? And in doing so, I really felt much more joy in my life. I know maybe it sounds crazy, but and maybe they thought I was crazy, but that's okay, because I had fun, and I got to smile and laugh a lot more. So, yeah, just remember the checker in the grocery store, too. They were kind of doing a tedious job, and people don't tend to always pay attention to them or even recognize them, right? But my favorite part was to learn of everyone else's spiritual practice. And we each took a turn to speak about our own. So, mine was about Native American spirituality. And this sums up, to me, what I came away from this session with. Looking behind, I am filled with gratitude. Looking forward, I am filled with vision. Looking upwards, I am filled with strength. Looking within, I discover peace. And that's from the Quero. So think about it. I certainly learned a lot. Opened my mind, made me feel more comfortable, learn more about myself, open myself up a bit more, because it's easy to just kind of be who you are and hide who you are sometimes by a smile. But I just feel very comfortable here, and it just was an amazing session I knew nothing really about, and I highly recommend it to you. Just take a leap of faith and try it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Aylin. Beth Wasson, I don't think she's in here, is looking for artists, musicians, and ideas to support and plan a fall community event. Find her today and tell her what you make, what you play, and what you have up your sleeve. She's looking forward to your talents and ideas. After we break for coffee and conversation, we continue with our adult discussion groups. Today, in lieu of a TED Talk, we're pleased to have Ryan Beasley lead a discussion about Brexit and Scotland's sovereignty. Ryan, Carolyn Beasley's son, resides in Scotland and is a professor at University of St. Andrews. On My Path will meet upstairs in the loft. This is a group for adults to celebrate and deepen their individual spiritual journey. It's open to all seekers from any path and is a safe place to speak your truth in a circle of trust. Visitors and newcomers are welcome and encouraged to attend all adult discussion groups. Reminder for parents, please pick up your children from the nursery immediately after Common Ground so that all ages can share in the fellowship and food. The nursery will reopen at 11:30 for the adult discussion groups. And now, please stand as you're willing and able and join the choir in singing our closing hymn, There is a Wideness in Your Mercy. Bradley Holt once said, "Loving the enemy does not include liking the enemy, but it best strives to win over the enemy from evil intent. If possible, I hope you bring with you, as you leave the sacred space, memory that even the ugliest spider has inherent worth and dignity, and that there are no ordinary people. Remember that to hate is easy. To love is the challenge. Go in peace."